Excellent. Um, cool. Well, uh, I'm gonna dispense of the thank yous and just say that we're going to hopefully very quickly go through sort of successive and building of demo of short demos that describe a series of different ways to integrate um, arches with the common sort of standard set of enterprise ArcGIS technologies. Let's move on to the next thing. So, I mean, I start most of my presentations with, why bother? Um, and in this case, I just want to say, really, it comes down to this, that a lot of organizations that have a need to implement arches, whether it's for cultural heritage or some other line of business, uh, honestly, more than half the time, they already have um, Esri licenses in place, Esri expertise in place, and the reality is that there are certain Arches is not built to replace your enterprise GIS. It's built to really augment it. And I mean, we could spend all day talking about, where it makes sense to use ArcGIS technology versus Arches technology. The thing I think we're going to focus on in the course of this demo is the simple reality that desktop GIS tools are particularly adept at creating geometry. And the geometry you can create in the native Arches user interface is not nearly as sophisticated as what you could do with ArcGIS Pro. Um, Maybe the other thing I'll just say is that as those who are familiar with Esri technology know, there's a whole huge, rich ecosystem of capabilities within that Esri environment that there is no reason, if you have it already in place, not to use it to publish and take advantage of your data that you maintain in your Arches system. Um, all right, let's move on to the next slide here. In order to sort of demonstrate these capabilities, Peter and I decided to take advantage of a little demo we put together for Caltrans within the last year or so, which is kind of funny that you're on the line here, Harold. So uh, we were responding to a request to prototype a capability for what they call an environmental incident response system. I know that most of the people on this call are in the heritage management field, and I just want to say that everything we're going to show you in this demo, while it's focused on the use case, is to support Caltrans's, is that a word? Caltrans's ability to quickly identify, assess, and assign resources to manage um, incidents on the state highway system. So, like if there's a landslide on Highway 1, what resources need to be deployed to manage that emergency incident? And that particular workflow includes capture of data in the field using mobile applications, sometimes disconnected, um, and also includes the use of ArcGIS desktop software. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So now this is where I want to sort of outline. I mean, this is the agenda in terms of the demo, is that we're going to build. Okay, we're going to start with the simplest possible integration, which all the Arches people on the line, which is everybody, should be familiar with, which is ArcGIS data in Arches, primarily using overlays and base maps. We're going to build on that, demonstrating Arches data in the ArcGIS environment. And once it's served um, uh, through Arc Server, it's immediately available not only to ArcPro, but to like every other application, Esri-based application under the sun. We're going to build on that to use that read-only to enhance that read-only connection to show you editing of Arches data within ArcGIS Pro. So literally using ArcGIS Pro as the basis to create geometry, create resources, and push them into arches. And then lastly, we're going to show this workflow that we built to capture data in the field using a key ArcGIS mobile technology called Survey 123 to capture resources and then load them into the Arches system. So next slide, please. Okay, I'll just, so demo one is the ArcGIS data in Arches on a read-only basis. Just so you know, what you're looking at on the right-hand side there is a very simple architecture diagram describing how the sausage is made under the covers. We can reference this if questions, but let's just get right into just showing it.
All right, cool. Thanks, Adam. So as Adam indicated, we want to consume ArcGIS data in Arches. I'm making the presumption here that that folks are familiar with ArcGIS and maybe ArcGIS Online, or you have your own organization in Enterprise or that. And what I'm looking at here is the Caltrans portal. And these are publicly facing, it's a collection of publicly facing maps and layers and tile services and that. And we can get at these and use these existing services in Arches. So I want to demonstrate that here in brief. So if we searched for rest areas, say, come up with some results. And if we were to look at the item page for that, and you come down here to the URL, you'll see the actual REST service endpoint for the feature service. If we view it, we can drill down into where we can query the data. And ultimately, what we're trying to do here is return GeoJSON. And I'll do that quickly just with the thing that's going to capture kind of everything. And I'll return GeoJSON. And we've got a big blob of GeoJSON here. If we take this URL, that can become our source in Arches, and we can style it. And what I'll do now is I'll jump over here to Arches, get my zoom controls out of the way. This is our demo Arches environment for this ARIS project. And if we go in here to the search in the map, what I'll show you here is if I click on overlays, here's the rest areas overlay that we are pulling in from that ArcGIS service. So this is reference data that you might already be managing as part of your operational GIS that now you're giving context in Arches without having to be a full-fledged Arches resource. So that's for overlays. I want to jump back over here to the Living Atlas just as an example. This is kind of a repository that Esri curates for different feature services and map services and that. What I want to highlight is the ability to constrain down to vector tiles, for instance, or even web mapping tile services and the like, and to use those again as from the item page, we can identify a source to use right here, and also a style to use here that we can kind of cherry pick and bring into Arches as a base map. So I'm going to first demonstrate a web mapping tile service that's in this case bringing in USGS quads. I could show you in the Django admin that the source for this is from ArcGIS Online, but for the sake of time, just trust me, I promise. Over here, I've got a vector tile service. And what's nifty about this is that you can actually modify these styles to suit, but you don't have to carry the overhead necessarily of providing your own base map. But you can. Some organizations have their own base maps. They want to be able to do that. But Arches, of course, is able to consume many different services and layers.
All right, cool. So that's data moving one way from ArcGIS into Arches. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, this is data moving the other way from arches into the ArcGIS environment.
So let's pretend that we're now operating as a GIS analyst and we're using Pro. I'll bring up Pro here on my screen and remote it into a machine that has it. And you can see on the map there is a piece of geometry. That geometry is right here. And if we look at the source of it, you can see that that is coming from Farallon's ArcGIS service. If we jump back over here to arches, I can go show you that feature. There's that same feature here. And what's convenient here is that as we as these are taking advantage of spatial views to display this data. Right now, I've got it displayed as just this simple polygon, but based on our spatial view definition, we might be able to give uh, a certain symbology. This is based on a node status. So we can run symbology off of it. We can have labeling enabled by it. And then if I demonstrate over here that we want to, if you recall, this was not started. If we change our value here to working, save our edit. We see our symbology is updated and our labels updated from the edit in Arches. So you've got your authoritative data in Arches, and you've got a read-only connection that you can style 100 different ways to support your operational GIS.
That's deep. Live arches data in ArcPro. Let's hit the next slide. Okay, cool. So we've established that read-only connection. Now what we're going to do is take advantage of oh God, what are the words? The Arches add-in for ArcGIS Pro that was developed by HE in order to edit geometry and within ArcPro and push it back in to Arches.
Yeah, so let's get back over here and let's pretend now, yeah, as Adam indicated, this is just a read-only service, but using the add-in, which I'll assume most folks are familiar with, but this is something that's well documented and you can install from GitHub, and it manifests in ArcGIS Pro as this toolbar. A quick tour of it, you specify your Arches instance and your credentials, and you connect, and you can see here that I'm connected. And really, what you can use this for is, I see the biggest strength is as Adam mentioned before, the geometry capabilities that you might get from your desktop, or all of the other analysis that your GIS team might be doing to enrich geometry or provide some other update. So what I want to do here is let's pretend that this is our active slide area, and if we get this full so I can zoom in here actually. If we pretend that we've got an updated incident extent, right? And and we see that actually they went out and they did the LiDAR work and they determined that this is actually the new toe of the new extent of the incident. What we can do using the add-in is queue up this resource in Arches with an update. So if I go here and I select that resource and I register it, now this is queued up to be edited. And you can see here it says working like we assigned it. And then I'll clear my selection. I'll select the geometry that I want to provide to it. And then I'll ensure that this replace existing geometry button is checked, and I'll upload. And I'm going to replace the geometry with this new higher precision one. And it chugs along, and you could see immediately that our service is already reflecting that new value. And if we go over here and bounce this, we can also see that we've got that higher precision geometry in effect. So that's updating the geometry. That's all well and good. If we want to provide a new geometry, we can do that and have that be the basis as a new resource in Arches that you can then carry on your workflows in Arches. So let's get our not our updated incident, but we've got a new incident now, and I believe it's just over here. Yeah, just there's a there's a rupture, and so we're going to go to create. Let's clear everything. We're going to go to create. We're going to make sure that our resource model is targeted, and then you select the geometry you want to update or that you want to provide, and we're going to provide that geometry. We're going to submit this geometry as a new resource. You could click this, but I'm on this remote machine. It's going to try to put me in the browser there, so I'm going to go back to my local browser and bounce this again. And we can see we've got a brand new resource all ready for your Arches work.
Awesome. Um, okay, so moving on to the next demo, is taking advantage of this server level integration in order to further take advantage of ArcGIS mobile tools, specifically in this case, Survey 123. And again, the architecture, sort of the data pathways are described in this slide here. Let's go ahead and move on to that demo.
All right. Let's see here. I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to share my phone. I hope none of my dumb friends text me. Um, okay. Yeesh, get away. Okay. Um, I'm on my mobile device. This is a Survey 123 web-based, browser-based form. You could get to it on your computer. You can get to it on your phone. Um, this is just it's an intake form for that Esri utilizes. It's actually based on XLS form. Um, but this is just one example of like a field-based or like field-facing technology. There's also capital F, capital M field maps from Esri that you can also edit feature services in that. But I'm going to demonstrate providing a new record through this through Survey 123. So uh, we built this form, as Adam mentioned, for Caltrans, so it's pretty specific. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can do here that essentially acts as the basis for your to field map against your resource model. So if I add a geometry here, I'm going to go near. Uh, we're going to go right up over here, just upstream from where I know that other incident was, and I'm going to draw a new slide. I'm going to say that that's Butte County, and that's you know, slide and a spread. And if we really wanted to, I'm gonna just because it's kind of fun, you can sketch an image, you can provide a picture, so this really enables field workflows. And we submit the bit. Okay, so now that's submitted. I'm going to switch back to my desktop screen share. Back in Arches. Oh, right. We need to actually import it. So what we did, we augmented bulk data manager to import from a feature service, which is essentially identifying that feature service, field mapping to your resource model. So I'm going to import that quickly. Fingers crossed. Okay, excellent. Look at that. And I'm going to go back to my search, and we should see that new resource. There's a lot of problems up on Highway 32 here. And there's our imported geometry. And you could see too that if we look at the resource report, uh, that there's our two values. There's our image that we dropped in, and obviously the geometry. I want to do one last thing here though, which is uh, I want to demonstrate also when you have your authoritative knowledge base of ArcGIS data uh, kind of provisioned out to ArcGIS, you get also access to kind of like some of the ArcGIS resources that are valuable to executives and higher ups and members of the public without them needing to be full-fledged, ArcGIS members or users. And I want to demonstrate that here by jumping over to this screen, and I'm gonna get my Zoom stuff out of the way if I can. All right. I've got right here on the right side, I've got an ArcGIS dashboard connected to that service. And I want to show you if right now, let's go in and change this value to working. We've got an immediate update on our external facing, big picture dashboard that is just a distilled version of the all the authoritative data that you're working with uh, in Arches. So yeah, that's I think covers all the bases of lobbying in and out and up and down and taking advantage of all of the investment you may have already made in your ArcGIS system and really augmenting it with the organizational knowledge that history that Arches that can provide.
Peter, can you hit the slideshow one last time and just go to that last slide? So those are kind of the four demos that all build on each other. Discussions? Question?
Looks like Eric had some questions in the chat.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I was
And
Yeah,
just asking about like, arches, you could define graphs with lots of deeply nested nodes and data could be sort of deeply nested and things like that. And
yeah,
that's not the way a lot of GIS works, especially.
yeah.
So how does that work?
I can answer that. I mean, it's when you define basically what's being served to ArcGIS server is a view, a database view. And that database view is a flattened representation of whatever nodes in your Arches graph you want to include. But you're right, it has to be flattened. And that can, and often does, I want to say degrade the data. It aggregates the data in some cases. Like I mean that's the answer to that. That's answer number one. Answer number two is that it's not often the case, but you can implement a fully like relational system on the Esri side. You could, in theory, like if you want the full richness, you could essentially implement a relational representation of your graph as spatial views or non-spatial tables that are served to arches and then linked together with relationship classes on the Esri side. That's
You-
that's a huge lift and often 1,000 times out of 1,001 not necessary, but it's something you could do.
I think also part of it is like trying to recognize the strengths of both systems and have them complement one another. And your other question there, Eric,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Thanks.
What's the question? Is the basis okay? Oh yeah. The XLS thing, right?
Yeah.
Maybe if nobody else, if everybody's too shy, maybe it is worth speaking to the elephant in the room, which is like, what if you want GIS but don't want ArcGIS Enterprise? And I mean, these same approaches work equally well in the QGIS universe and GeoServer universe. Um, yeah, I'll
Yeah.
just leave it at that.
It, I mean, there was a very, very recent bug fix, like within the last 6 months within ArcGIS Pro, that allows it to be in sync uh, with an OGC feature service. Before it would connect to it, you could see it, but it wouldn't refresh. So you'd have to close the software and open it back up to make a new connection to see the data updates. That's been recently relieved. It maybe lessens the reliance of on enterprise to be able to do what we just demonstrated today. Um, but there's a lot of people that already have it, and I guess it's worth mentioning you don't need like a dedicated enterprise instance to like connect it to Arches. You can run it alongside. I mean, your mileage may vary. I mean, depends on your use case, of course, but nothing technically restricting you from kind of co-locating uses within your enterprise, your ArcGIS enterprise.
Just wanted to chime in because you did mention QGIS, that there is a QGIS plugin that has been developed for Arches, and maybe they will have a separate presentation. Maybe that's something that could be done. But I think we kind of figured that it made more sense to have this presentation separate.
I believe there will be a presentation about QGIS at the UK interest group meeting, which is taking place on March 26th. And I'll put more information about that in the chat. I believe it's recorded. But for questions, there's also a forum post about it to get more information. So I'll put that all in the chat as well.
I had a quick question. In all the things you demonstrated, is the API used for any of those transactions? I think you mentioned a database view, which I don't think would use the Arches API, but I'm wondering if any of those other up and downs. And maybe I'm off base with this.
No,
But
not at
just
all.
curious though.
Peter, could you show the slide from, or you know what? I could show it just as easily.
I think the short answer is no.
No, the short it's yes. If we look at the ArcPro integration slide, so from here up to here is read only, and then we take advantage of the Arches API to push GeoJSON from ArcPro into Arches server.
Cool. Gotcha.
yeah, knowing that you know the back end of Arches pretty well, Adam. We're using the tile and node value endpoints to write back to Arc.
Of the API endpoints.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I'll just also mention that right now you authenticate with username and password from the add-in, but OAuth authentication is coming soon to both the Esri add-in and it's already in the QGIS plugin, but not released in the current version. So, but it will be coming probably in the next 6 months.
Does that mean single sign-on, Cyrus?
It means when you're using it, rather than entering your username and password in the plugin or the add-in, you'll pull up Arches, authenticate with Arches, close it, um,
Then it knows
and then
somehow.
it knows. Yeah. So however you're authenticating in Arches, it's not so important as long as you authenticate. The big difference is that you won't be entering your username and password directly into the add-in or the plugin. Um, it's a bit more secure and more flexible because then it doesn't really matter whether you're using a single sign-in or whether you're just using the traditional authentication system in Arches.
Cool. Well, I don't know. I mean, what do users think? I want to point at Maggie, honestly. I mean, Maggie, are you doing any of this?
We are using just read-only access. So specifically for our findings process, where we have to bring our survey findings that we do in Arches, we bring that to our Historic Preservation Commission, and we're still creating like PDF maps and tables really for the commissioners and the public. Just accessibility, and they're more familiar with the PDF format. And then for our staff packets. So we are using the spatial view, and the data is like live pulled into ArcGIS Pro or ArcMap.
Yeah.
Um, and then so that is like live. So which is really great, if we notice an issue in Arches, oh, this wasn't filled out correctly, I can very quickly fix it in Arches, and then it syncs right immediately with ArcGIS Pro. And then that we can update our maps and the symbology. We can just do a lot more with the symbology for like a public facing PDF map in Arc Pro than we
Yeah.
can in Arches. But then in our tables, we do an export using the sort of flattened tables and just a couple fields from our like survey units that are the spatial view. So the attribute table in Arc Pro, we use that for our findings adoption table. And then that table includes like an assessor parcel number, address, our just general finding, is it a historic resource, is it not? And then a link over to the resource report in Arches. And I think we've gotten like 2,500 properties adopted by HPC in that way so far. So no one's had any issues with that process.
Nice.
Yeah, I think we're always hoping to optimize it, but it's definitely working really well for us right now. And then something that we've done recently internally with our IT staff that really specialize in all of the like Esri products and manage the San Francisco property information map, recently created a feature class that is like an ETL kind of update every night that captures the survey unit status, and then it appends some of our survey phasing areas, because there's some information that we don't currently have in our Arches instance, and we're now being able to take a sort of like a snapshot of Arches and then appending data that is outside of Arches to it, and that is also helping with understanding our progress too with the survey project.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyone else want to share what they're doing with our pro? Adam, should we close your screen?
Oh, yeah, totally. Sorry, I forgot I was even sharing.
It's okay. Well, if we want, we can start wrapping up. Um, a couple more minutes left. Any other questions or thoughts, contributions for the Arches and ArcGIS presentation?
I had a question about the mobile app capabilities that and kind of like the roadmap in general for Arches and how you see Arches users moving forward in using mobile apps with Arches. Is the Esri integration kind of the wave of the future there for that? Is that the expectation? What are folks thinking? What do people see on the horizon as possibilities there?
I mean, I think definitely Survey 123 is an option, but I know that there are other Arches implementers that are using other tools for mobile data collection, whether it's an Arches mobile workflow in San Francisco, or I think Open Data Kit from some of the Arcadia projects.
QField, is anyone using QField? QGIS? I don't know if there's an implementation there or not.
Well, I'll just mention this was kind of brought up earlier that if your data is deeply nested and your cardinality is n, these mobile apps are generally designed for flat data. So there are limitations to using them. However, in a lot of cases, if you can design your views so that there's really one geometry per record, and you're not working with nested cardinality and tiles, then yeah, most of these things will work. And it could be that you do some data collection in the field with these things, and then fill out the detailed nested data back in the office.
I've got to imagine that I mean just more complex field mapping could accommodate that to some degree. But
Maybe if depending on how you design your views, and yeah, that could possibly to some degree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically a complex ETL problem.
Yeah, and I was just about to say that. I mean, it's like a data. Yeah, you're basically designing what that data workflow is like.
Yeah, you might have to have some custom work on the Arches side that can parse the data and put it in the tile it belongs. So.
That's right, Eric. It's just an ETL problem. No big deal.
I love how just
Yeah.
and ETL is together in one sentence.
Go.
On that note, I think we had talked about for our next meeting, if we're ready to pivot since we're at 1 o'clock. We had talked about doing an ETL and bulk data manager presentation.
We kind of just did one.
But I think that that's definitely something that we've talked about at the Arches team, that or just generally, because bulk data manager has been out for a long time.
Yeah.
And we really haven't talked about the updated ways to all the updated ways to get data into Arches. We haven't really talked about that in a meaningful way in a long time.
I mean, not to volunteer myself again, but here I go. I mean, we made heavy use of the bulk data manager for legacy data import for a project we just finished with California PUC. Might be something there.